Hello dear viewers and subscribers of our channel. Today's date is August 30th, 2025, and we bring you a brief analysis of the military operations map. At this moment, key shifts are observed in the South Donetsk sector, the Pokrovsk sector, as well as the Constantinoka sector. In addition, significant changes are noted in the Krani Lyman sector. As for the areas near Seusk and Kupiansk, the situation there remains stable without any updates. For several days now, intense clashes have been recorded. Similarly, relative calm continues in the Karkov and Summ sectors. Therefore, as usual, we will begin our review from the southern sections and gradually move north. But before diving into details, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with fresh developments and updates. Now let's move on to the situation in Stepnogorsk and Kamenskoye. Regarding Kamenskoye, a significant part of this settlement is fully controlled by Russian forces, and their zone of influence continues to expand towards Stepovoy. A large portion of Stepovoy is also under Russian control. However, the Ukrainian armed forces, AFU, are conducting counterattacks, as a result of which the northern outskirts of this settlement came under their control. Intense clashes are ongoing. Today, noticeable changes were registered in the settlement of Plavny. Most of this settlement is already under Russian control, and active offensive operations are now underway on its northern outskirts. In addition, fierce battles continue in Stepnogorsk. Russian forces are bringing in reinforcements and increasing troop numbers there. However, no progress in advancement has been noted yet, and fighting remains concentrated on the outskirts. Nevertheless, clashes in Plavny are ongoing, and Russian forces are methodically advancing along the Dnipro, forcing the AFU to retreat. We will continue to monitor developments in this sector. Now let's move further into the South Donetsk sector, toward Temirovka and Olgovskoye. As you know, the areas from Levadnoye to Olgovskoye and Temirovka have been taken under Russian control, and their zone of influence is expanding toward Novoivanovka. Today, data was received about further expansion in that direction. Temirovka is fully controlled by Russian forces, with heavy fighting taking place in its surroundings. Russian troops are advancing toward Novoivanovka, gradually clearing the entire area of enemy presence. At the same time, active clashes are also ongoing in Olgovskoye itself. Let's shift a bit north on the map. As you know, Zaporizhia and Novogeorgievka are fully under Russian control, and Kamyshevaka is now being encircled from the flanks, from Novogeorgievka and Voronovo. Intense battles are still taking place in Voronovo, but this salient is steadily being squeezed from multiple directions, with Russian forces pressing the AFU. Active clashes are already underway directly in Kamyshevaka, and the surrounding areas are gradually falling under Russian control. Pressure on Sechnavoye is also increasing from several sides, since Malyevka, Voskresenko, and Alexandrogorod are already controlled by Russian forces, and battles are now raging inside Sechnavoye itself. This salient, just like Kamyshevaka, is gradually collapsing and falling under Russian control, with offensive operations continuing toward Novosyolovka. In addition, FPV drone units are striking AFU positions in Berezovoye, Ternovoye, Sosnovka, Novosyolovka, and Lesnoye. Meanwhile, Russian forces are steadily advancing toward Novosyolovka, where active battles are already taking place on the outskirts. As for the Andreevka-Klevtsovo area, no changes so far. For several days now, the situation has remained uncertain, with intense clashes continuing on the outskirts of Zelyony Gai and Tolstoy, which are under Russian control. At the same time, Russian troops are pressing toward Ivanovka, where fighting is already ongoing on the settlement's outskirts. The territory from Zelyony Gai to Dakhnoye is already fully controlled by Russian forces, as is the village of Filia, with offensive operations ongoing toward Novopavlovka. Regarding Muravka, heavy fighting continues there, while all areas south of this settlement have already come under Russian control. Clashes are also ongoing in Novonikolaivka and Belyakovka, but without updates, these battles have been dragging on for several days. As for Udachnoye, a significant portion of this settlement is already controlled by Russian forces, and the Russian armed forces are methodically pushing the AFU out into the tree lines and fields north of Udachnoye. No changes in Kotlinu, So let's move on to the Pokrovsk sector. As of today, the map has been updated and everything marked in the grey zone is already under Russian control. The map itself is not yet fully up to date. Novoukrayinka is fully under Russian control. A significant part of Chunishino has also come under Russian control, along with all the tree lines near Chunishino and Novoukrayinka. Currently, the zone of control continues to expand north of Dachanskoye, and a significant part of Lisovka is already under Russian control, with intense battles ongoing on its eastern outskirts. Clashes are now taking place inside Sukhoi Yar. Russian forces are expanding their influence toward Novopavlovka and then toward Pokrovsk itself. On Pokrovsk's southern outskirts, heavy fighting is ongoing, with Russian troops gradually gaining street-by-street control. Active clashes are also taking place in the center of Pokrovsk. Simultaneously, Russian forces are bypassing Pokrovsk from the west, approaching the supply road leading to the settlement. However, the AFU are trying to defend this supply line. Now let's move northeast on the map, toward Mirigrad. Intense battles are ongoing in Kazatskoye and Promin, focused on Mirigrad as well as Balagan. The areas west of Mikhailovka and Mirolyubovka are under Russian control, though the AFU are attempting counterattacks, and active clashes continue for control of these territories. Russian forces are nonetheless advancing toward Mirigrad. The AFU also launched a counterattack on the southern outskirts of Novoekonomikiskoye, seizing some areas. Russian forces, however, are fighting hard here to suppress this counteroffensive. Meanwhile, north of Mirigrad, territories have fallen under Russian control, with active battles now taking place on the settlement's northern outskirts. Russian forces are advancing into Mirigrad itself, and heavy fighting is ongoing in Krani Lyman. A significant portion of this settlement is gradually coming under Russian control. Just above on the map is Rodinskoye. Heavy battles continue there as well, though no fresh updates about the settlement itself have been received. Fighting persists, but Sukhoyetskoye is fully under Russian control. Today, new data indicates that the zone of control is expanding from Sukhoyetskoye toward Mirigrad, along the supply road leading to Pokrovsk. Russian forces are pressing toward this supply line, while the AFU are trying to hold it. Let's zoom the map out. Regarding the corridor toward Petrovka and Marievka, no changes here. Heavy battles are ongoing in all settlements along this corridor, namely in Kucherov Yar, Kolodezi, Marievka, Petrovka, and Gruskoye. Relative calm in Nikanorovka, no fresh updates received, and it remains unclear who controls the settlement. Meanwhile, Russian forces continue pressing toward Vladimirovka, Shakovo, and Sofievka, and are expanding their control north of Poltavka. Rusiny Yar remains quiet, so let's move further to the Constantinoka sector. As of today, the map has been updated, and as you know, Klebanbyk, Shcherbinovka, Novosparskoye, and Yekaterinovka are fully controlled by Russian forces. However, heavy fighting continues on the northern outskirts of Klebanbyk, as AFU personnel remain there. Operations are ongoing to clear the forested areas and open fields between Alexandro Kalinovo and Klebanbyk, with these territories gradually coming under Russian control step by step. Fierce battles also continue in Ivanopoliye and Pleshchayevka, and the entire area from Klebanbyk to Pleshchayevka, as well as from Ivanopoliye to Alexandro Shultino, is being methodically cleared of enemy presence. Reports indicate that the southern section of these forested areas and fields has already been fully cleared and brought under Russian control. Let's zoom the map in for a closer look. Here we see Alexandro Shultino, a significant portion of which is already under Russian control, with intensive offensive maneuvers continuing in the direction of Constantinoka. In addition, clearing operations are being carried out across this entire salient, which is gradually coming under the control of the Russian armed forces. Stupochki is fully under Russian control, and at present, heavy fighting is taking place in Predtechino as well as in Nikolaevka. Meanwhile, Russian forces have also approached Chervonoye, and active clashes are already unfolding on the outskirts of this settlement. As for Mayskoye, areas south of this settlement are already controlled by the Russian armed forces, and heavy fighting is now underway directly inside Mayskoye. Regarding Grigorievka, it is fully controlled by Russian troops, as are the surrounding areas, and step by step, Russian forces are advancing toward Markovo and Novomarkovo. South of these settlements, in the forest belts and open fields, fierce clashes and clearing operations are ongoing. Let's pull the map back for a broader view. Concerning the Seusk sector, the Serebryansky forest is almost completely cleared, and Russian forces are gradually advancing toward Dronovka from the north, as well as from Serebryanka, which is fully under Russian control. Russian troops are now on the outskirts of Dronovka, and intense clashes have begun in the surrounding tree lines and fields. Otherwise, along the entire Seusk front line, the situation remains tense, with fierce fighting continuing, but no major shifts have been recorded. So let's move on to the Krani Lyman sector. As for Torskoye, it has long been fully under Russian control, as are the southern outskirts of Zareknoye. In addition, intensive offensive maneuvers continue from the eastern side of Zareknoye, and fierce clashes are ongoing on the northern outskirts of the settlement. Russian forces are methodically pushing through positions in this locality, with more and more territory, including residential structures, coming under their control. Let's shift north on the map, toward Kolodezi. Kolodezi is fully controlled by Russian forces, as is Zelenaya Dolina and the surrounding areas. Today, fresh reports came in from the settlements of Srednai and Shandrigolovo. Just north of Srednai, areas have come under Russian control, where Russian troops continue applying pressure. In addition, the eastern outskirts of Shandrigolovo have been taken under Russian control, and Russian forces are advancing further into the settlement. Updated reports also indicate that the Russian armed forces are expanding their influence toward Derilovo, and the entire corridor of territory has come under their control. Heavy fighting is now gradually shifting into Derilovo itself. Intensive offensive maneuvers are also continuing in the direction of the settlement of Stavki. Reports indicate an expansion of the control zone toward this settlement starting from Kolodezi. Slightly higher on the map, we see Redkodub, Karpovka, and Novomikhailovka. The areas south of Karpovka are under Russian control, and fierce fighting is taking place in Karpovka. Regarding Redkodub, the AFU attempted a counter-offensive there, and now heavy clashes are ongoing on the northern outskirts of the settlement, with Russian forces trying to withstand the pressure from the AFU. Katerinovka is fully under Russian control, but the situation in Novomikhailovka remains tense. The AFU attempted counterattacks there as well, and Ukrainian forces have managed to push into the settlement, where fierce fighting is taking place. No fresh updates have been received yet, but we will continue to monitor developments in this area. Let's move further north on the map, toward Melovoye, Katne, and Ambernoye. Melovoye itself, as well as the areas up to Katne and Ambernoye, are already under Russian control. Heavy fighting is now underway in Ambernoye and Katne, which remain under AFU control. Fierce clashes are already unfolding on the outskirts of these settlements, but no shifts in territorial control have yet been recorded there. We will continue to track developments. Now let's move further north on the map, toward the Karkov sector. In the Karkov sector, relative calm has been observed for several days. Fierce clashes continue along the entire front line, but no territorial changes have occurred over the past week. We will continue to monitor this direction, so let's move on to the Sumy sector, toward Yunakovka. As you know, the entire settlement of Yunakovka is already controlled by Russian forces, and now heavy fighting continues on its outskirts, particularly on the southern side. Russian troops are pressing towards Sadki and Mariino, which remain under AFU control. The AFU are being forced to retreat from Yunakovka toward Mariino and Sadki. In addition, Russian forces are advancing step by step from Yablanovka, and this entire broad salient of fields up to the nearby forest lines will soon be cleared, since there are no fortified AFU positions or trench systems here. Russian forces will therefore be able to break through these forest lines and fields with little difficulty and gradually approach the settlements of Sadki and Mariino. Finally, let's move on to the concluding settlements: Kondratovka, Andreevka, Alexeyevka, Varachino, and Novonikolaevka. Varachino, Novonikolaevka, and Alexeyevka are all fully under Russian control. However, the AFU are carrying out counter-offensive operations toward Varachino and in the direction of Nikolaevka. From Andreevka and Kondratovka, the AFU are also conducting counter-offensive actions toward Alexeyevka, expanding their zone of influence near these settlements. Heavy fighting is now taking place on the outskirts of Alexeyevka, as well as on the peripheries of Novonikolevka and directly in Varachino, east of Andreevka. The AFU have expanded their zone of control, and northeast of Kondratovka, areas have also fallen under AFU control, since Russian troop presence there is limited, allowing Ukrainian forces to break through and seize certain territories. Intense fighting is currently ongoing in these settlements. We will continue to monitor developments. And that is all for today's updates according to the map and incoming reports. Thank you very much for your attention. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new updates and always stay informed about the latest events.